His Virginia campaign headquarters tonight. He has vanquished a fellow Marine, Oliver North. There you can see the cheering. This was one of the most bitterly contested of the races. In the background on the large screen is Oliver North himself. And there, thanks to television, you can see both candidates in the same room.
Maddox making excuses for Richards. She's
let me say that you're not going to be able to pick up the
one of two, either Pennsylvania or Minnesota, or better, both.
Well, we have projected Montana, if that's any help to you.
Well, that'll help. Now we're down
Conrad
to 3.
Burns will be coming back for a second term, it does appear. But there are some members of your own party who are wondering if there's a strong political agenda that they have to pursue, and they only have 2 years in which to do it, possibly. They can't have you running off to New Hampshire and Iowa and a lot of other places. You're going to have to stay at home and do your homework.
Well, I think if that's a real problem, we can address it, but I've been used to doing my homework and still doing a lot across the country. We've been in about 500 events the last 2 years in 47 states. So I know what hard work is, but we are going to have a responsibility, no doubt about it. The American people have spoken. I think they said GOP means change. They expect us to be responsible. We will be. We'll work with the president where we can. But we don't have the majority yet, so I don't want to be premature.
But if you get it, what is your #1 legislative priority?
Well, we haven't sorted that out. I've got to get together with all my new colleagues. We're electing a lot of new colleagues around, and Bob Dole isn't going to make that determination. It's going to be made with House members, with Newt Gingrich, with new senators, with the leadership, listening to the American people. We think we know. They want us to address Congress, I think, right up front. Let's see if we can't fix Congress. Maybe we can never do it perfectly. And then maybe welfare reform, go back and take a look at the crime bill, take a look at if the president's willing to scale down health care bill. But we know we have a responsibility. We're willing to assume that burden. And we've had an opportunity to do that in the past. We had control, as you know, the Senate 6 years in the Reagan administration. Right. In fact, I talked to Mrs. Reagan tonight and told her that thanks to the foundation President Reagan had laid, we might be back in the majority.
All right. Thanks very much, Senator Bob Dole. Those breakfasts that you have for reporters occasionally will be a lot more crowded now. Well, let's go to Virginia and take a quick look at Oliver North, who is speaking to his supporters tonight. He, of course, is the loser there.
State assemblies
comes as a big surprise to a lot of people.
Need people like you. These are the bodies that make the rules, that levy the burdens, and strip the blessed dignity of an honest...
This special Dateline is sponsored in part by Healthy Choice Dinners and Entrees. Eat what you like.
I think they may get the 40 seats necessary to take control in the House. And at this moment, I don't think we can say they're wrong.
What happens if they end up with 38 seats?
Well, Congressman Newt Gingrich has been working the other side of the aisle. He thinks he has a few in his pocket, Democratic members who would vote for him as Speaker in return for, shall we say, services rendered. They might find a very beneficial subcommittee chairmanship, or be looked upon very favorably over the next 2 years.
All right, in another part of our election special central here, we have Gwen Ifill, who is a new member of NBC News. She comes to us from the New York Times. We call this the Eiffel Tower. She's up there with some political veterans who have been watching all of this and are going to help us during the course of this evening with some analysis of what's going on. Gwen, what are you hearing?
Well, Tom, I'm up here with Geraldine Ferraro, the former member of Congress, and Peggy Noonan, the former Bush aide and author, and Warren Rudman, who is a former member of the Senate, and we're all kind of dumbstruck by what's going on tonight. We've been talking a lot about what we think is happening with the Democrats and with the Republicans, and especially the surprise with Oliver North in Virginia. What we've been trying to figure out, though, is what happens, what goes on next.
We're not going to talk specifically yet for, I think, another 45 minutes about what's happening, because we want, frankly, to make sure that we know what's happening on the West Coast. And you know, the trend lines are very good. They're actually better than we thought they'd be. Obviously, in the Senate, we are, I think, on the verge, again, depending on what happens in Washington State and California, and a couple of very close races. But it looks like Senator Dole will be the majority leader, and that will certainly change things.
Congressman Newt Gingrich in the prosperous suburbs just north of Atlanta, anticipating that he will be the new Speaker of the House, or certainly in a position to do a lot of legislative control there over the next 2 years. He is running against Ben Jones. You probably know him best as Cooter Jones from Hee Haw. About a third of the vote has been counted there. We do expect that Newt Gingrich will be elected and possibly become the Speaker. Then we'll hear a lot about that Republican contract that got so much attention. Can he achieve all the goals that he set forth there, Tim?
He can, Tom, and ask Bob Dole. That's why Bob Dole and the Senate Republicans did not embrace the House Republican contract. Bob Dole has said that you cannot cut taxes, increase defense, and still balance the budget without coping with entitlements, which means Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Newt Gingrich has said otherwise. If the Republicans capture the House and the Senate, they're going to have a real ideological struggle between those two houses.
And of course, one of the interesting things to watch will be whether he can go from being a backbencher, a guerrilla fighter, to a statesman and a leader in the House. He insists that he can. NBC News coverage of Decision 94 continues.
Tomorrow.
Well, what you see behind me is a quick summary of what has been going on this evening. In the Senate, the Republicans have picked up 7 seats. The governors, for the Republicans, they have picked up 6 seats. President Clinton has been saying all along, well, unemployment is down, the economy is ticking along, we've got democracy restored in Haiti and peace in the Middle East, but it could not compete with higher taxes, with crime and violence, with welfare, with anxiety about good jobs, and something about American values. All that in play, and it's playing into the hands of the Republicans. We have some very close races that we cannot yet call for you. We're going to tell you about the first one right off the bat. This could determine, finally, the ultimate control of the Senate. That is in Pennsylvania. 3/4 of the vote has been counted so far. It's virtually, by our purposes, a dead heat. Harris Warford hopes to hold on to go back. In the New York governor's race, about half the vote has been counted. George Pataki mounting a very strong challenge to Mario Cuomo, who wants a 4th term. We cannot make a call on that race yet. In Florida, Jeb Bush, one of the 2 Bush sons running for governor this time, he's in a tight race with Lawton Chiles. 2/3 of the vote counted. In Texas, pretty much the same thing. 1/3 of the vote has been counted. Incumbent Ann Richards with a very strong challenge from George W. Bush, who's the eldest of the Bush sons. And so that's where that stands at this hour. We still have some very important races to be determined tonight. But it does seem that there is a real Republican tidal wave sweeping across the country, beginning to change the character. We want to talk about that now with some people who have been there before in a variety of capacities. They're with our NBC News correspondent, Gwen Ifill, and the Eiffel Tower, as we were calling her, little corner of the section here tonight, directly above us. Peggy Noonan, former Senator Warren Rudman, and Geraldine Ferraro, who is, of course, the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket. Gwen?
Well, we wonder, we've been talking among ourselves about how one governs and whether this means that America is now in love with Republicans. Who governs and how?
Well, I think what's going to happen is the Republicans, now that they're the majority in the Senate,